You're listening to Oprah Radio.
And now back to the place where we can catch the latest happenings and have a lot of fun. It's the Gayle King Show.
Hello and welcome back to the Gayle King Show. I said at the beginning of the show there are really only two men in this country that really know what happened on Ware Avenue that day in June when Sergeant James Crowley and Henry Louis Gates met at his home, and Henry Louis Gates joins us in the studio. Hello, Professor Gates.
Hello, Gayle.
I know he walked in, the first thing I said was, so, what's new? Boy, oh boy, oh boy. I mean, I sit here. Number one, I have to say that the picture of you in handcuffs, I have to say, Skip, was really heartbreaking to see. And when I think about you as a person and when I think about the situation, it was a picture I never thought I would see in my whole life, and to see it was actually painful. Was actually painful to see. Because of the man that I know. It was very tough.
But it made me think, Gayle, of all of those men and women who are handcuffed unjustly and arbitrarily every day. This really isn't something about me. You know, I know that you're a very spiritual person because, in full disclosure, you and I are friends. We know each other. And I think, without putting too fine a point on it, that often we're chosen for events for larger reasons. And I think I was chosen to be arrested in my own home so that I would start to devote my considerable resources toward a problem that plagues American society and that plagues the criminal justice system. And that is both racial profiling and arbitrary, capricious actions by rogue cops.
Okay. Well, of course, Sergeant Crowley has a different side. So let's go back to that day, Skip. The way we hear it, they get a call from a neighbor. Which, by the way, don't the neighbors know you in that neighborhood? Doesn't your neighbor know that a black man lives there? I mean, I was surprised that a neighbor would call. Let's start with that. Don't the neighbors know you?
Well, I thought everybody knew me in Harvard Square.
Yes.
I mean, if you walk with me through Harvard Square, people stop me all the time.
Yes.
I've been at Harvard 18 years, and I've lived many years in this house. I live by myself. It's a bright yellow house, as everybody knows, because it looks like the sun.
I know. I was going to say, well, he likes yellow. Okay, yes. My favorite color, yes.
Next time I'll consult with you about the
Yes, I don't know if I would have painted my house yellow, but go ahead. So the neighbors call. So the police are responding.
But it's an apartment building, and I don't know this person, and if she's listening, as I said last night on CNN, I want to thank her for protecting my house.
For looking out, yeah.
I have a very valuable book collection, art collection, and if anyone's snooping around my house right now, I hope she's calling 911, and I want the police to come.
Yeah, so you're not upset that the police were called. If somebody legitimately thought that black, white, or green was breaking into your house, you're not upset about that. But according to the police report, he arrives, Sergeant Crowley arrives, he sees a black man, which we now know to be you, standing in the house, and in the report, in plain view, he asked you to step outside. And you, according to this police report, said, no, I'm not going to step outside.
That's right. And
then you start yelling and say, why? Because I'm a black man in America.
No, that's where the truth value of that report ends. Here's what really happened.
Yeah. Because I don't think it's unreasonable for a cop who's been called to a scene to investigate a burglary, who arrives and sees a black man, he's told a black man was breaking in, to say, look, I need to talk to you. That doesn't seem to be an unreasonable request to me.
Well, the reason it would be unreasonable for you or any of your listeners to accept that request is that he can arrest you as soon as you step outside your house for suspicion of breaking and entering. Without a warrant, he can't arrest you in your house. And it was very hostile. It wasn't like, hello, Mrs. King.
Yes.
Could you step outside so we could take a picture? It was like, step outside. And all of my hackles went up. The hair stood up on my neck. And I knew that all of a sudden, rather than this man, I thought he would say, hello, Professor Gates, we got this call about breaking and entering.
Yes.
And I said, no. The first thing he said to me was not, are you okay? Is anyone holding you hostage? He didn't explain the circumstance. He just looked at me and said, would you step outside? I said no. Then
why did you say no?
Because I knew
that you could be arrested.
I could be arrested.
Okay.
On suspicion of breaking and entering, because he was hostile.
Oh, okay.
You could see it on his face, and you could hear it in his voice. And I'd never been treated that way by the police. Certainly not in my house at Harvard Square. What we're leaving out, what your listeners don't know, is that my door had been jammed. I'd just flown back from China. I had a driver who was from Morocco. You and I would not say he was black, but this my next door
To the
neighbor
outside
said,
looking, yes.
two black men wearing backpacks.
Yes.
Now, Gail, you've known me for a long time.
Yes.
When's the last backpack you saw me wear?
Yes.
You know.
And a cane.
And a cane.
Yes.
And so the door was jammed, and it took us 15 minutes fiddling with this door, and it turned out someone had jimmied the lock while I was in China.
Mm-hmm.
But we couldn't get it open, so I told Driss, the driver, just push through the door.
Mm-hmm.
It popped open. I gave him his tip. He brought in all my bags. He left. I was on the phone with the Harvard real estate office. Harvard owns my house. I have a hotline. I call a very nice person, happens to be a woman, and she assigns.
So you're
people to
saying
come.
there's something wrong with my door. Can somebody come fix it? Is
Yeah,
that what
and
you're
I'm
on the
on
line with? Yes.
Yeah, and I'm in my kitchen. I look up, and there's a policeman on my front porch.
Mm-hmm.
Then I walked to the front porch. I said, "May I help you?" And he said, "Step outside."
Mm-hmm.
So I went, all of a sudden, I know I'm in danger.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "May I help you?" And he said, "We're investigating a 911 breaking and entering charge." I said, "Oh, don't worry, officer. I'm Professor Gates. I live here."
Mm-hmm.
He said, I said, "And I'm a Harvard professor."
Now, Skip, did you really, you just said that he was hostile. Did you really respond, "Oh, okay, I'm Professor Gates," or did you become hostile back to him?
No, I didn't become firm with him until a little bit later.
Okay.
I never was hostile, but I was very, very firm. And this is what happened.
Okay.
He said, "Can you prove that you're a Harvard professor?"
Mm-hmm.
He didn't say, "Can you prove you live here?" I said, "Yes." And if we look in my wallet right now,
Mm-hmm.
I keep my Harvard ID with a photograph and my Massachusetts driver's license with my photograph and an address together
Mm-hmm.
in my wallet.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see one without the other.
So you give that to him.
I turned and walked back to the kitchen where my wallet was sitting on the island. He followed me.
Oh, he's inside the house.
He's inside the house. He didn't ask permission. He just walked
in. Okay.
I hand him both IDs. He's looking at him. And Gail, I watched his face. He's trying to unpack a narrative that he had. This is where racial profiling came in. He was so sure that he had a catch. And all of a sudden he had to try to unwrite that story and wrap his head around. And he starts to ask me another question. I said, "That's enough."
Mm-hmm.
I said,
what did he ask? Like what? Do you remember?
He just started to ask a question about, I interrupted him. I said, "That's enough. This is my house. You have my IDs." I said, "I want your name and your badge number."
Mm-hmm.
This is when everything turned. I said, "I am filing a complaint. I want your name and your badge number."
Now, why are you filing a complaint and asking if he just walked in and said, "Look, let me read this," and he's looking at it, and he can tell, "Oh, gosh, this is not the story I thought it was." What made you say, "I want your name and your badge number"? There had to be something between the two of you.
It all started on that front porch. I shouldn't have been greeted that way.
I see.
What about my security?
Mm-hmm.
If he's really investigating a 911, I am the innocent person.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
He needed to greet me with respect, not presume that I'm the perp, as they say on television.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to file a report so that their police instructions would be transformed. Just because a black man answers the door and you're responding to a 911 charge, treat him, or in the case of an African-American woman, with respect. Don't go presuming. Don't do anything else. Protect me.